Welcome to this is our first night here with No Kings on the Hill. So when sitting U.S. senators and 6 House Democrats go on camera telling them the military and CIA to ignore the commander in chief, that's not politics. That's a constitutional crisis. And tonight we're going to walk through what actually happened and why some intelligence veterans believe this was coordinated, not chaotic, coordinated. Joe?
Yeah, hi, I'm Joe St. Clair. I'm a former Air Force intelligence analyst, and I would concur with that. I don't think this is random. I think that there are clear indications that this is planned, rehearsed, and very, very deliberate.
Yep. And same here. So stay with us. This may be the most important episode we've ever done. And then now we're going to do a little short advertisement and we'll be right back.
Heard of Q Broadcast? It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part? There are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Hill. I'm Dr. Hill, and not an attorney, but someone who understands public policy, administrative law, and the mechanics of government. I'm also someone who studies how the gears of government work and what happens when people try to jam junk into the gears of government on purpose. And also, this is kind of off script, but I wanted to say that we are praying for the National Guards men that were shot today in Washington, D.C. Originally, it was reported as 2 guardsmen had been killed. Now it's being reported as they're still in critical condition, so it's still kind of touch and go on that subject. Hopefully we'll have something more to update on towards the end of the show. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Joe.
Yeah, again, I'm Joe St. Clair. I have a Juris Doctorate from Berkeley. I also did 10 years in the Air Force where I was a language analyst specialist. And again, given my experience in the military, I would say this was very deliberate. I did 4 deployments to Afghanistan, and this is a facet of military operations known as influence operations. And then underneath that, you have the discipline what's known as psychological operations. And the goal and objective of when Mark Kelly and these 6 individuals, they all have very, very high caliber and degree of expertise in intelligence and influence operations. And when you're conducting these operations, the goal is not to influence the general or the president, the person making the decisions. Instead, what you do is you target the populace or you target the average soldier through leaflet drops or whatever. So that's exactly what's going on here, is that rather than addressing or using the political system as it should be, they're directing their message to sow dissent within the body of the uniformed personnel of our country. And it's a very, very dangerous set of actions to be taken.
Yeah, so pretty much that's what we're going to do. Now he's getting what the mainstream media won't do, and that's that this wasn't grandstanding. It was them operating off a script crafted by intelligence insiders, wanting the bureaucracy to prepare for a showdown with President Trump. Because see, here's the thing: is what they don't want to tell you is, and this is what the left fears and what the bureaucracy fears, is for a long time Congress slowly gave their power to the executive. But what happened was the president never really operated under that power. There was a bunch of unelected bureaucrats sitting in the background that were making the policy and everything, allowing Congress to not have to touch all the touchy-feely, the stuff that's really touchy and could get them to lose an election or whatever. They can blame it on that they didn't do it. And so now President Trump is pretty much telling them, hey, if you what it's called, we'll talk about a little bit more later on, is what it is it's an executive order that he put up. It's called Schedule F. And in Schedule F, it pretty much states that if you want to create policy and work at the pleasure of the president, if you want job security, then you know what? Go work for the DMV, because he's not going to have that anymore. Because what they've done for years, and I can give you a good example from President Trump's first term, the ANWR, that's what the name of it was, in Alaska. All right, when he did the executive order to open that for drilling and excavation, they always have to do a study, and it was supposed to be a 90 to 180 day study. Well, that study took 3.5 years almost. So by the time they approved it, maybe one or two people had just gotten their drilling permits when Biden came into office and stopped it and reversed it. And that's what the Democrats have done for a long time, is that a policy that a conservative has tried to pass does not align with what the unelected bureaucrats feel is more in line with that agency's prerogative or mission statement, or whatever you want to call it. They decide to slow walk the studies, to take forever for that study to actually get approved, because it's not like President Trump signs an executive order and tomorrow that is what is policy. First, if you look at every executive order, there's a 30 to 90 day study that has to be done. That study is then returned back. Then you actually draft the policy based on that study. Then if the policy is a major shift, then it still has to get approved by both houses of Congress, House and the Senate. Then it becomes policy. But until then, it's not policy. So that's literally all this was. This was a shot at the bow, pretty much stating, hey, President Trump, hey, bureaucrats, if they're going to go after you, we'll protect you. And that's literally what it was, is they were trying to say that. But to get back on topic, I was wanting to say that we would also like to thank the Patriots Prayer Network for bringing us on and offering us this larger platform. For viewers who are seeing our show for the first time, please check out our website. It's scrolling across the bottom. Well, no, it's not scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It was supposed to be. So let me get my banner up. There it is.
If you join the chat, you could also add it as
it's No Kings on the Hill at drhilllaw.com. Check it out there. You can see all of our websites. Also, right there on the homepage in the top right-hand corner is the links to all of our social media pages. So you can follow us and check us out there. But this is not our first episode, but this is our first episode streaming on Q and the Patriots Prayer Network. So we'd like to thank everybody for bringing us on, giving us this chance. And please make sure to follow us on social media, because if we start getting enough people following us on there and subscribing to the website or to the subscriptions, supporting us on TikTok, we will start doing subscriber-only lives separate from our live here every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 Eastern, and 3 p.m. Pacific Time. So please check it out. And also you can leave us messages or anything if you've got ideas of what you would like to see us cover on the show, or if you'd like to see something new on the show, let us know. You can let us know there on the website or DM on TikTok, Facebook, or X. So please check that out, and we will appreciate that, because without y'all support, this show doesn't happen. So we'll definitely like to have that going. So this is our first time. So if it looks like we're a little stuff's iffier stuff, we're still getting the feel for it. This is a new setup, new process. Usually we could just go however long we wanted. We weren't stuck to a specific hour time frame or anything like that. So now to get started with our first half of the show, we're going to do the deep diving into the unlawful orders. messaging campaign, which I kind of covered most of that already, but that's why this is such a dangerous moment. Is we have to understand that something for most Americans don't, because they were never taught this in civics, because military leaders and personnel don't determine what is legal and what isn't. So if you refuse an order, you'd better be 100% right, or you will be spending a good 10, 20 years in Leavenworth. Only after the order is carried out does the determination really take place. And how, you may ask, well, the courts, the legal chain with the Department of Defense, and established judicial review, and not politicians filming campaign style videos. You have to, now some stuff is obviously okay, it's unconstitutional, but a lot of the presidential prerogatives or presidential directives are not that clear. So they're pretty much, when Senator Kelly and 6 Democrats told military and CIA employees to ignore unlawful orders, the reality is they were creating illegal friction. They were trying to create a constitutional crisis. And like I said earlier, they were trying to tell them, hey, we're going to support you. I mean, they implied congressional members have the authority to prejudge the president's directives under 18 USC 2387. Counseling insubordination in the armed forces is a federal crime. And Kelly does have immunity under the speech and debate clause for what is said on the floor of the Senate. But the Supreme Court has never implied that protection carries over to a viral social media post. It's not a legislative act. And so that protection is not there. And also there's talks about recalling him, because they can do that with somebody who's retired, and then court-martialing him.
Right.
And so this isn't how our system works. This is how a parliamentarian system works, or a monarchy, which is not what we are. I mean, it may be what the Democrats want to take us to, but as of right now, we are still a constitutional republic.
Well, I think they're probably more likely to pursue aristocracy or oligarchy with technocrats. But my question for Mark Kelly is, where was his message about illegal orders when he may not be the architect of perhaps the Patriot Act, but what was he doing when there was obviously illegal orders being given to military members who were operating under the NSA, being told to illegally collect on Americans? He didn't say anything. So, silence for the last 2 decades from these career intelligence professionals, and yet now they're acting as a fourth estate, right? And in a way, this is unprecedented in our country. We have not seen sitting politicians or former leaders of the CIA or any intelligence agency directly addressing active duty troops. Unfortunately, we have seen them try to put their hand on the scale. We saw that with the Hunter Biden laptop story, where you had around 60 former intelligence professionals say this was, a Russian scheme, when it turned out it wasn't. So clearly, on a personal level, they're not afraid, and they're not shying away from using, their personal and professional experiences in order to manipulate the American public. That being said, I think you made an important point, is that they are supposed to be adherent to the people. The people are sovereign. It's not the bureaucrats that are sovereign. But this is unprecedented in the sense that they are becoming a fourth estate, and I think it's more akin to what we would call the Praetorian Guard, which was present in the Roman Empire, right? Where the very, very soldiers and trusted agents who were expected to protect the empire and the emperor instead were assassinating the empire, selling the position, and essentially acting as, the kingmakers. And we don't want that in this country. You cannot have those two systems in place and continue to operate as a constitutional republic. So this is an existential threat to our system, to our country, and to the United States of America.
Yeah, and what it is that we've had this in place for a very long time. It's just President Trump is the first one to really show that, is the one to really prove that it's there, to show how all of the stuff going on with the powers that Congress has given up. President Trump's really the first one to try to use those and actually say, hey, look, if you're not a elected official, you work for the executive branch, you work for the administrative state or the executive agencies under the purview of the executive, that being the president, then you are working at the pleasure of the president, just like everybody else under the executive branch does. So if you want to make policy, then you work at the pleasure, you serve at the pleasure of the president, not serving at the pleasure of yourself. And that's what a lot of people, they're not getting, is Congress is the one who gave up did that. They're the ones that separated. It started back in early 1913 with what right before World War I up till the time we entered in World War I in 1917. And then after World War World War II, we really saw it going on with the all the big stuff in the 30s and 40s with the whatchamacallit deal. Going blank on that, but that's literally the whole administrative state is unconstitutional. But it's not the president who did it. It's Congress who created it and who is slowly giving away their authority. But now that there's a president who is actually using that power that was given to him by the Congress, now all of a sudden they're upset. Now all of a sudden they're screaming, it's unconstitutional and blah, blah, blah. No, he is literally doing using the powers that they gave to the president. It's just, unfortunately, most past presidents haven't done that. And we can kind of get into the more conspiracy theory part of this. And that's the fact that if you looked at the Bilderberg group or the Illuminati or any of that, CIA, Trump's not part of it. He's the first president, hasn't been part of that group, which is why you could honestly say that both sides, whether it's the Republicans or Democrats, have just hated him, have pushed against him, have not wanted him in office, have tried to do everything to keep him from getting elected or being in office. And that's because the fact is they can't control him. Democrats and Republicans argued, but it was never calling each other existential threats to democracy or Nazis or Gestapo or Adolf Hitler, relating them to that or anything. It was just on policy stuff. And then as soon as everything was done, they were back drinking, talking to each other, best friends. They may not like each other's policies, but they all played within the same set of rules. They were all playing for the same group, for the same goal, which, like you were saying, aristocracy, I think it was more apt to be something of the UN, pretty much United Nations running, which, I mean, if you look at how many things that they've slowly tried to give power over to the United Nations with taxing and everything else, and they've tried to give powers over the United Nations that way. And I think that's really where that was going. And then Trump's setting that back, if not, and exposing it at the same time. And they're not happy with it. And that's why we're seeing all this pushback. That's why we're seeing all these attacks from the inside. I mean, even, and this is like before President Trump had no protection from anywhere. It was all going on against him. And now, like they were saying, with Pete Hegseth, that he's working on making sure that there's no leaking getting out, getting stricter with reporting requirements and everything inside of the Pentagon to get control of that.
Yeah, if I had a chance to ask Mark Kelly or the other five, I would ask them, be specific. What order are you talking about that's illegal? Because I think that's also part of their strategy. Is it's very open-ended. They're not actually identifying anything. It's very opaque and very, very subject to interpretation. And when you have such a highly polarized country, you're going to have two interpretations, right? Those on the left are going to say everything that Trump's doing is illegal, and obviously on the right, that's not the viewpoint. So, yeah, we're heading into dangerous territory when we have he's not acting as a senator. That's not what he was doing here. He was using his credentials as retired military, and that is completely unacceptable. Any military professional will tell you that.
Oh yeah, and here's the funny thing is not Mark Kelly, and the funny thing is he even tried to double down on stupid last night when he went on Jimmy Kimmel and doubled down on the same statement. But yet it was the one of the other six, Slotkin. She's admitted to the news media that there was no unlawful order that she could appoint to. And see, here's the thing is they're acting like they're trying to do something or something when literally the oath that you swear when you sign up for the military, when you take your oath, or with the CIA, you take an oath. You may not take an oath with some of the other administrative offices or something of lower government, but when you're serving a CIA agent, an FBI agent, or in the military, you take an oath, and it's clear in your oath that you do not have to follow an unconstitutional order. So you don't need somebody to tell you that.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on that I'll say for the next section. But yeah, I think that's definitely true. That is before you even sign the document, you have to practice the oath to the Constitution. this is the bread and butter. This is any person enlisting, any person as an officer is going to take this oath. They know it. And this is exactly how we've guaranteed that in this country, rather than having a military that, forms juntas and appoints presidents or political bodies, we have a military that's subservient and to civilians. That's exactly what we need and what we want in our country. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can keep going because we kind of jumped ahead there, jumped back versus staying on it. So, I mean, we've still got about another 10, 15 minutes before we need to jump to the lightning rounds and cover all of that. So we can keep going into more depth on this.
Are you still in section 1 or are you wanting to move on to section 2?
No, we were still in we jumped from section 1 to section 2 and kind of back to section 2. So we can keep going there.
Okay. Yeah. So, I've kind of already mentioned it, but one thing is that when these 6 came out, they used very coordinated language, right? This was planned. And we've seen this time and time. Anyone watching this show, I'm going to guess that you've been, keyed into the mainstream media, and you've seen it time and time again where a news release, something happens, and the language and the messaging are all identical. And that's not by coincidence. This happens in the military. If I was an enlisted soldier or an officer and there's an operation going on, I can't go to the press and talk to them. Instead, what I would do is I tell you to go to the public affairs office. And the public affairs office, through the chain of command, there's going to be a centralized point of information that gives out messaging, right? And they'll say things like, you don't confirm, you don't deny information. So they're using the tactics, the techniques, and procedures that they've learned to use against our adversaries in foreign countries, whether it's in counterinsurgency or whether or not it's in allied countries where we're trying to essentially exert influence and shift them to be more favorable to the United States. They're now using these strategies on Americans. And to me, these people have taken an oath. But I think it's important to mention that just because you served in the military, there are a great many people that are good, outstanding military individuals and citizens in the military. But it is true that, bad people can join the military as well. And it's a magnet for certain characteristics, people who are power hungry and somewhat sociopathic to a certain extent. So when you have these people conducting these actions that so out of line with the oath they took to the Constitution, we really have to kind of question where their allegiance lies. Is it to us, the Union, to the Constitution, or is it to themselves as individuals? And obviously, for the last 30 years, as we've seen an increase in the surveillance state and the powers that these agencies have, these people have personally profited from it. And it's hard not to disconnect that, right? And depending on how you look at the last 20 years, if you want to question whether or not what they did was illegal or unconstitutional, they also have a vested interest in preventing any kind of backward analysis or holding them accountable, which is exactly why they fear Trump, because he knows they don't have him blackmailed. They know that he is independent, self-sufficient. He's not dependent on them for money, power, they cannot influence him. And many of his supporters, they cannot influence. So rather than, participate in the democratic representative process, they're trying to sow as much discord and chaos as they can in society, as well as in the military. And if you look at what's coming out of the left, they're pushing for civil war. And I think that is the very, very last thing that we should do. I think that there's ways to roll this back without having, violence, maybe mass pardons for people, middle management low, who participated in the kind of, unconstitutional actions that have taken place previously. And then, jail time for the architects and the managers who were giving the orders out. And the last thing too is that they have a very, very deliberate target audience, right? The military generally, the majority of military members lean conservative. Many are Republican, but the military is a melting pot, just like the country is. They recruit out of every single state, and there's people of every political ideology present in the military. So we've seen it where you have these lone wolf actors who have psychological problems, who, they engage in these what we would call insane acts, where they're taking other people's lives, starting fires, riots, things like that, political assassinations. And then you're directing this message at young military members who are probably already hyper partized in one direction or another, polarized. This is the exact young 20-year-old men. They're the exact kind of people that do commit acts of political violence. And, we should be denouncing this, but we should also be holding Mark Kelly and his co-conspirators responsible, just like we should be holding Comey and Brennan responsible. I think that if this administration doesn't succeed in getting positive indictments and convictions against the soft coup that took place, then then someone's saying in the comments that a civil war has already started on their end, then yes, that's indicative of a civil war has already started, and that's very, very sad and tragic that that's occurring in this country once again.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's the problem with overall this is they kind of want the civil war, because the thing is they don't want us to be a constitutional republic anymore. They want it to be. They want the socialism. They want the national health care and all this stuff. They want the national pay, or the national not pay but salary and stuff like that. And President Trump, the way he's showing everything up and trying to pull it back, is he's destroying all the hard work that they've done over these last couple of years. And a lot of it started a long time ago, but a lot of the work got moved forward under the Obama administration. And then President Trump, they didn't think he was going to come in there. They think they'd still be able to keep putting in their chosen next presidents. Because if you want to look back historically, every president for about the last 100 years, before whether they came out of nowhere or they were previous, right before their presidential campaign started or during the early part of their presidential campaign, they were at the Bilderberg Group meeting, which is a meeting of, they don't take any minutes. It's a private meeting. No media is allowed in there. And it's the world's most elite and powerful worldwide. And that's what they want to do. That's what their goal is. And that's what Trump is exposing and starting to set back. Their goal is to keep us, the people, either certain ones of us uneducated and the rest of us fighting each other and at each other's throats. Like, I don't know if some of y'all are from Texas and maybe some of y'all are from the Northeast, but they've tried to make it to where if I tell you I'm a Cowboys fan and you're an Eagles fan, that's fighting words. And that's the way they've tried to make Republican and Democrat. When in reality, yeah, you've got your 2 to 3% on each side of the spectrum that doesn't want the same thing, but the majority of all of us want the same thing for our families, want the same thing for our country, want the same thing for ourselves. We just have different ideas of how to get there. And if we let the emotions and the feelings out of it and we use logic and reasoning, we can usually sit down and either find somewhere to meet in the middle, or we can find a way to agree to disagree. But the left has been trying to make this to where, oh, if you don't think one way, then you're just wrong. You're evil. You're not, you can't be reasoned with or nothing. And that's not the truth. That's just not how it works. Like, they want to sit there and try to judge and whitewash all the past and judge all of our past, the founding fathers and everybody. They want to try to judge them off of how we think today society wise, when you can't do that. You have to look at when you look at history, you have to look at it through the lens of the time they were living in. Were they good people for the time that they were living in, based on the society they were living in and how that society acted? Because yes, we know slavery is bad. It's a horrible thing. It should never happen. But you can't sit there and judge somebody who was a slave owner back then because we know how it is now, because then they were just doing what everybody else was doing. Doesn't make it right, but doesn't mean they were necessarily a bad person. And a lot of that was already out the door anyways whenever the country was formed. And just like the fact of this, we've gotten this part with, we did a show last week on the Islamification of the United States and how that's not compatible with the Constitution and everything. And everybody tries to say that that there's a separation of church and state. There's not. There's nothing in the Constitution for separation of church and state. It was Adams or one of them that wrote a letter to a Supreme Court justice that was talking about separation of church and state because they were afraid of something like the Church of England happening here. But there, it's not actually in there. If you actually looked, 12 or 10 or 12 of the original 13 colonies, all in their constitutions, had a religious requirement to vote. You had to literally swear that you were a Christian or whatever just to vote and to be active in the community. So there was no separation of church and state when they were looking at that. There was only like one or two people even at the signing of the Constitution that were not Christians. But that's what they've been trying to divide us on. And
well, I think the bright side of that is I've been pretty observant of culture, and I think 10, 15 years ago there's a huge element of atheism in this country, and I think that's on its way out. And whether it's due to the creation of AI, where people are realizing maybe the world's not so much as it seems, where this UFO stuff that's popping up, I think that many people are awakening to the fact that obviously there's some form of higher power. So, to kind of dip into the religious aspect, which I know that's not the point of the podcast, I always point out that God will win in the end, and that's why I'm not worried and I'm not afraid. Every tongue will confess at the end of days. So, not saying that life isn't filled with ups and downs, and we're still called upon to do what's right and what God commands us to do. So the question is how do we do that as individuals, but also as citizens, and exercising that in our political system without engaging in the same acts of domination and tyranny that it seems that the people who really don't have faith would engage in, because they don't have a deeper sense of morality.
Well, yeah, and you were talking about that. Even if you start looking into the multiverse and the multiverse theories and quantum realities and quantum mechanics, even that subscribes to some type of higher being per se, because once you're conscious, when you pass away, your consciousness goes back into the ether, as they call it. It goes back to the one consciousness. And so, I mean, even that scientifically, that's starting to show a form of higher power, or a form of whatever you want to call it. But my problem when it comes to, and we can talk about all we want of religion on here because this is a Christian channel. But the other thing about with Christianity and everything is, I think the funny thing is all these people sit there and they want to talk about being against it. I mean, it's the 10 Commandments. Nobody cares that people were trying to get banned Sharia law and all this stuff. But yet if somebody wants to bring the 10 Commandments into the school, oh, it's all bad. But if you look at it, 10 Commandments, it's just morality. It's literally don't commit adultery, don't commit murder, treat your neighbor as you would want to be treated. It's simple as that. I mean, and it's crazy that people act like that's bad or something, that's not a good morality claim. Yeah, well, there's
when I was in high school, I remember one of my required readings. This was in North Carolina in public school in 12th grade. I was required to read Siddhartha Gautama's Buddha, and no one's talking about banning that book in schools, right? I'm sure any public school in America probably has access to the Quran. So, there is a discussion to be had of that you have the right to have these materials present in school as well. And the only argument I see against that is one directional, specifically against, whatever you want to call it, Judeo-Christian ethics and beliefs. That's what they want to get out of the classroom. They're perfectly fine discussing Islam. They're any other religion, essentially. They have entire classes dedicated to it. And yet, obviously it shows you, in order to facilitate what they want to do in our country, just like they did during the French Revolution, where they tried to abolish God, abolish religion. And, George Washington denounced that. I think you might have mentioned that last week, right? Yeah, we had a little bit of discussion about that last week. But it's very interesting that it's single directionally against a specific set of beliefs. And it's almost like they understand that is the foundation of our country, because whether you want to admit it or not, this country, the majority of people at the founding of this country were Christians. And today, I don't know if it's still a majority, it's at least a plurality are Christians. So when you take away religion, that's one of the basic building blocks of society. Then you could essentially destroy the people, destroy the state, destroy the system, and establish yourself as king or God or whatever you want to do. And there's a reason that we have ourselves anchored.
Yeah, and there's another reason why they prefer. That's why they don't care about if you do Islam or anything like that, because they know that the Islam, that's never going to take over. They know the majority is Christian, so they want to keep, like, again, it's to keep us arguing and fighting and at each other's throats and everything. So we're paying attention to over here while they're doing what they want to do, while they're trying to advance their ideals and their powers. And what we got to do as people is we've got to wake up. You've got to educate yourself, and you've got to realize that your political opposite is not your enemy. They are your friend, your neighbor, your loved ones. Why y'all may not agree on everything, the majority of us, we can find somewhere to meet in the middle. We can find somewhere to agree on and compromise. And if we do that, then we can stop giving them so much power. We sit there and see, I mean, it's so bad to the point that these people can keep getting away with doing this and nobody votes them out of power. It seems like everybody sits there and says they don't want them, or that person shouldn't be in power anymore. Then when it comes time to voting, nobody goes out and votes against them. People are still voting for them. Nobody good gets up and runs against them. And that's what we've got to realize, is we're never going to get them out of power if we don't go out there and do something. I've heard some people argue for term limits and stuff, which is great. I can argue a certain amount of term limits and stuff, but the problem is how are you going to get people to vote on limiting their job time?
Well, you're getting me to go back on my soapbox, which I'll tie into Christianity as well, because Jesus said that the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think we live in a country that's very highly narcissistic and obviously obsessed with money. But when you look at where our money comes from, it's what you call fiat currency, meaning that there is no, assigned value based on gold or number of hours worked necessarily. What the value of our money is derived from what we're told by central bankers, right? So essentially you have a class of unelected bureaucrats or elites that are telling us what's valuable, and then they're funneling money in the system. And when that occurs, that's exactly what facilitates the ability for these centers of power to purchase politicians. It's exactly what allows them to purchase and influence judges. And again, it's just not compatible with, the system that our founding fathers designed. And it's that they want to create this false matrix of financialization, and they want to get you as disconnected from base level reality as they can to suck you into their, whatever you want to call it, web.
Yeah, and
make you a slave indirectly.
Yep, and it's kind of this thing with Mark Kelly that we started off the time with, is that's the point they're going out and doing these type of psyops, is they're trying to get us to fight each other, they're trying to keep that power. And that's one reason why they want a one world order, is because, like you said, it's a fiat currency. It's only, the value of it is only determined by what the bank or what the so-called economy claims that money is worth. So if you've got one world order, one economy per se, then you can pretty much almost eliminate money to a point, because of the fact you control what everything's worth. Nobody else does. But problem is you still don't have enough resources for everybody to become rich. The only difference is going to be is in a free market economy, everybody has a chance to become rich. Doesn't mean everybody will take those chances or it has the ability to succeed at those chances. Now, obviously, some people have a little better chance than the other, but I'm sorry. You can look at look at the people who were born into wealth and just blew that wealth, and whose families were the richest families in the world, and they're broke now. And the only thing they have now is their name, if they even have that. And that's because of the fact that if you don't know how to do and you invest that money right, use it correctly, everything like that. And I was talking this with the owner of my company, and he's a liberal and he's a staunch Democrat. And even he agreed with me when we were talking about just Trump as far as it goes with business owning and stuff. And I go, I don't care if he was given $100, 500,000, 500 million to go into real estate development and go into the industries that he did, which was luxury and hotels and that type of area, which is the most cyclical and up and down industry and real estate development and to last 45, 50 years and to build a company into billions of dollars and to only have 4, 5, 6, not bankruptcies company wise, but project wide. That's projects that went bankrupt. And the thing is each one of those projects are a separate entity. And that project could have been bankrupt because the city, all of a sudden, you get all the permitting, everything ready to go. You just start building, and all of a sudden, the city decides to shut it down and take 3 years to finally give you your approval. And by the time they've done that, it's gone belly up. And you either, one, have to bankrupt other companies to try to save that project, or you bankrupt that one project and keep going.
Well, here's the key difference between families or individuals like Trump and elites or bureaucrats that oppose him is that he did that on his own. They did that without being in the revolving door between private industry and being an elected or appointed official. The rest of these folks, Fauci, for example, the guy who led the NIH, they've sat in these positions for years and somehow they've enriched themselves. We know Nancy Pelosi, Crenshaw, he's a Republican, actually, the guy with the eye patch from Texas. This goes against both parties.
Oh yeah.
And I think that one of the things, whether you're America First, whether you're MAGA, I think we recognize that even within, you want to call it conservative, right-leaning political body, there's those who really aren't. We know they're not. And when push comes to shove, they voted against our interests time and time again, yet they are the wolf in sheep's clothing. And
well, how many people, when you get up into power and everybody else is doing it, everybody else is up being offered it, and then somebody comes and says, hey, you vote for this bill, I'll let you buy 100, I'll give you 100, I'll give you 500 shares in the company, whether you purchase anything or not. And then all of a sudden you're a millionaire. And that's the whole point of trying to get them away. That's why I think the congressional members should have to do what the president does. When President Trump got elected the first time, he had to put his company and all of his interests, even though his kids were running it, in a blind trust. Mm-hmm. Whenever he ended his presidency, he was able to pull it out. When he went back in this time, it had to go into a blind trust where he really doesn't have any control over how it's spent or major investments that are done or anything like that. I don't think that Congress or the Senate shouldn't be able to invest at all, because some of them, yes, they serve careers, but if we only want them serving 2-3 terms and we want to put term limits on it, they still got to have some way to save up a retirement. And having to put your retirement off your retirement investments off 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, that's a big thing. Now, maybe we can say, okay, you can't purchase individual stocks. You can only purchase equity funds or money market funds or stuff like that are a combined group of a bunch of different individual stocks. It's not one stock, it's individual self. That's where you really get rich at. But also we could make them all have to put their money in a blind trust where they cannot, all they can sit there and say is every year, hey, look, I'm willing to do a 10% risk reward.
Well,
either
let
10% loss,
me play
10%
devil's
gain.
advocate on that one, because I agree with what you're saying. We could incentivize them serving and, provide for them. But I don't think that there's a single American president. I know, I think it was who is the Civil War general who became a president after Ulysses S. Grant.
Yep,
he died in poverty, but he was still taken care of. He never faced the public helped him. But these are public servants. Servant connotates you serve, right? It's not that you enrich yourself. And I think that the fact that we've gotten so disconnected from essentially sticking to a hard set of values, I would say maybe having those stricter rules in place would bring the right people in to serve, because that's what we want, is people who actually want the better.
I agree with you. I'm not saying don't restrict them. I'm saying put stricter restrictions. I'm just saying you can't make it to where they can't invest in anything at all, because if they're doing it for the right thing and the right reason, then they've got to be able to still plan for the future. Now, they shouldn't be able to go in there and purchase 500 shares in stocks or 100 shares in stocks of a company that they know is going to become money because they voted for a certain bill for going to war. Like, you right now see a lot of people trying to stir up dissent and arguments about the Trump's guy that's negotiating the Russia-Ukraine deal. It's almost like they don't want the deal to happen. They don't want peace because they're they've got all the lobbyists from the military industrial complex on their butts saying, hey, we're losing money if this war ends. If this war keeps going, we keep making money. And it's like because they're trying to say, oh, are you worried that he's too friendly to Russian? I'm sorry, but people don't understand how negotiation works. All right. Ukraine has no power in this negotiation. We can try to make Ukraine love us all we want, but if Russia, if we don't make them like us or feel like that we like them and that we're pulling for them, they have no reason to settle. They've got the military power and the people and the money to keep going. Ukraine doesn't. So he has to be friendly to Russia when he's talking to Russia, because we're trying to get Russia to settle for a peace deal and give back some of the land that they've already taken, plus let Ukraine have certain things. I mean, it's like they want the war to keep going, that they don't want peace because they've got lobbyists sitting in their ears saying, hey, we need to keep making money. And it was it's funny, the same president who signed and was president during World War II, after World War II, and was pretty much started the military industrial complex and literally took over all of the industries and stuff during the war to make things that caused it, also warned about the downsides of it, of how it could end up literally controlling because war is money.
Yeah. Eisenhower in his farewell address said that he identified it because he was a key player. But this is like any other system, right? I could start a family and I have a family underneath me and I pass away, but that family carries on, right? There's a certain level of inertia when we design a system. I could, if we were living tribal days and I used force to make myself king or dictator, and I used force to keep people repressed down, it's not like all of a sudden I could wake up one day and say, all that power, manipulation, domination I was using was wrong. Because the moment I do that, someone's going to poison my food. Someone's going to eliminate me as dictator or king. So there's a certain level of autonomy taken out once this system's constructed. It becomes the dictator's hostage to his own position. Once and we're seeing that right now with Maduro, where he can't give up power because where is he going to go? He's already there's people out there in Venezuela who want to take him out. And, does he want to live in Russia? There's not many places for him to go. And this is just a quick off. I think one of the interesting things is if we have peace in Ukraine by Friday, we're also talking about possibly Venezuela ops, direct action against Venezuela by Friday. So what's going on? Maybe geopolitically, Ukraine's being given up. Venezuela is being shifted back to us. We have a multipolar world, United States in the West, Russia in the East, and then China and Asia. So
well, with Venezuela, we're not taking over. We're just going to give it to the elected president that almost every Western nation has recognized as the duly elected president that Maduro did not let take power whenever he won. And then the same thing where you're talking about what they kind of become the of their own power and stuff is look at Russia and look at Putin. If he's to sit there and give up all land gains that he made, even possibly give up Crimea, he's dead.
Exactly. That's my exact point with inertia, where there's momentum carrying him through. If he takes his foot off the gas, he's not going to make it over the gap if the bridge is jumping.
Because either somebody in his upper military control is going to take his spot and put their foot back on the gas, or his people are going to be they may not have wanted to see the war happen. They may not have been happy with the war happening, but now that it's happened, they sure don't want to see all of their family members and their sons and their daughters and all that have lost their life for nothing, to give up and just give ground. I mean, that's kind of the same way that Americans felt when we pulled out of Afghanistan and just let it go to total crap. And literally within a couple months was back to the Taliban and everything and control that we lost thousands of lives and spent 20 years fighting for, that was pretty much for nothing. And if we had pulled out correctly and we had actually trained the people under us correctly, and instead of trying to democratize them, we had went ahead and let them install their own government and their own tribal ways that would have been more in line with their society and their beliefs and their religious backgrounds, then it could have survived. But that's the problem is every time we go into these other countries, we want to implement our form of democracy. And I'm sorry, but in the Middle East, where it's very tribal and very religious, you are not going to get whether it's any type of Western form of democracy to work. There's ways to get certain democracies to work that necessarily don't end up in a dictatorship or a monarchy per se, a hereditary monarchy per se, but you can't just, and that's kind of the same thing happened there. Is luckily our leaders don't have to worry about somebody going after them or taking them out. But in Russia, in a country like that where it's dictators, that you do have to worry about.
I feel like that was true for our country. Unfortunately, I think that political violence is returning. I think there's been a lot of attempted assassinations on presidents, and obviously, I think president has had the most, I guess, per capita fatalities out of any job in the United States up to this point. So, there's a certain level of risk that you undertake when you do choose to be a public servant and you're trying to make, but that's also true. The inverse is true. Just like you're saying in autocratic systems, we're seeing right now Mao Zedong, or I'm sorry, not Mao Zedong, Xi Jinping. There's rumors coming out of China that he's no longer the shot caller. I mean, he's getting up there in years. He's been at the mantle of power for, almost 2 decades now, but that's inevitably going to come to an end. And the question is, what is he going to be replaced by? Because we've seen in the past when Mao Zedong went out of power, he was replaced with the CCP, and certain reforms were made. But we shouldn't have that here in our. I don't think anybody want. I actually am going to correct myself. There are certainly people in this country who want that because, unfortunately, whether you want to call it sin, whether you want to call it like the mark of Cain, like this. My brother is more blessed by God, and therefore I hate him, and I'm going to murder him, and I'm going to seize his blessing. That seems to be a very, very basic human instinct that we constantly have to fight against, throughout history.
Yeah, and see, here's the problem with wanting to just tear up our form of democracy and our Constitution and restart over what everything is. If you look historically, all right, it doesn't work out. If you look at definitely in the Western, like over in the European countries, like I think France has had how many revolutions just since we've been around, and how many constitutions have they overturned and went through since just the United States 250 years, not including all the other countries over there. While our Constitution may not be perfect and all that, it is the longest standing, longest running democracy of our time and possibly even history. And we have ways to go in and change our Constitution. It's called a constitutional convention, or, well, obviously you can do the one way, which is Congress and the Senate can pass through 2/3 vote or supermajority pass an amendment, and then it can be ratified by 34 countries. Or we can call on a Article 5 constitutional convention, which takes 34 states to call for it. And then those 34 states get to pick and vote for what amendment items or what changes to the Constitution they would like to see. And then they get to vote for representatives to send, delegates to send to Washington that are each count as one vote, and they're supposed to stick to the line of what they were sent there for. Doesn't mean they have to, but they're supposed to. And then you get 2 to 3 delegates or 4 delegates, depending on the size of the state, from every state that goes to Washington, and you end up with another constitutional convention like we had in 1778.
Right.
And then once those are passed, all 34 states have to then ratify it. And it's done at the state level, not at the federal level, where it's just Congress passing whenever they want, nobody reading it, going back to states. That's how you do it. You don't do it through having judges do judicial activism and go out and try to control, be the president themselves and roll on feeling and stuff, because that's not what a judge's job is to do. A judge's job is not to make laws. Their job is to say whether what is being done is within the rule of law as it was written when it was written. It is Congress's job to change that. Now, the judge could say, hey, look, this is constitutional, but I think Congress, you should pass this. Hey, Congress, you need to do something about this. This is not wrong. They can put that in their opinion. They can put that in their dissenting, their concurrent opinion. But in their ruling, it's supposed to be based not off of feeling, but off of law and original intent of the Constitution when that constitutional amendment was passed. It is not their job to legislate from the bench. And that's what we're seeing now with all these judges trying to stop every freaking executive order that President Trump passes or whatever and all that. Look, and somebody earlier goes, well, because we had the shooting today with the National Guard in DC, and somebody on my TikTok replied to me, were they supposed to be pulled out? I'm like, no, because DC is literally under the purview of the executive branch.
Right.
He can,
Yeah.
that's the
I
one
don't know if
area
it's
you
the
can't stop
time.
him. He's technically the mayor, the governor, everything of DC.
Are we,
I mean,
are we ending at right at 60? Just somewhat. I think we have 3 minutes left, right?
Oh yeah, we're getting close. I didn't even know
Yeah.
we were getting that far on. So yeah, everybody would like to thank everybody that's chose. Looks like we're almost near 1,000, which this is thanks the most we've even ever had. Like I said, this isn't a new show, but we definitely got to get on a bigger platform. So please let us know if you would like to see any specific topics, like to see maybe us change it up or do something different. Let us know. I might start taking votes to see if everybody follows me on our Facebook page or the TikTok, start running polls to see which topic they'd like to see covered that week. Also, I know we are going to start covering some stuff with the elections because we've got election season come up. And look, I know this is a midterm election, but this is just, we got to pretend like this is a presidential election, because
Right.
if the Republicans lose the House or the Senate, and we're already close to it, we possibly could lose it in the middle before the election even happens. If we lose it, it will literally be like the last President Trump's last term. It will be gridlock and impeachment hearings. So once again, Joe and I would like to thank y'all for joining us tonight and taking an important time out of your day to watch our show. If you want deeper analysis, fact sheets, research sources, and upcoming episode schedules, please visit our website at nokingsonthehill with drlaw.com. I've got a blog on there. I haven't really been doing it yet lately because we haven't had a lot of people join on there. But if we start doing it, I will start putting up the blog post again, possibly me and Joe. And then also please follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, X, and Facebook. We can't fight for the transparency alone or fight to get this word out.
I'm just on TikTok right now. I don't have many public facing accounts, like I said before. I do want to say one last thing is that, just the topic of today's podcast regarding, intel operations and influencing, as long as you remain rooted and foundational and you stick to the truth, as long as you make that your daily habit and routine, then you're not going to fall into these lies and deceptions, right? Go back to the foundation, go back to the basics, right? That's what I always say, right? Yeah. I think I say that everybody.
But yeah, so please check out our website, follow us. I always post on TikTok. So I do clips from this on TikTok. I post updated videos daily on TikTok. And then also I stream this on my YouTube, my page, and then we also have the Patriots Prayer Network. We want to thank them for this. And then also please join us now every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern, and have a very happy Thanksgiving and time with your family, and praise to God, and y'all have a good night.